Greetings everyone, and apologies for a late return due to my other research commitments in our very mathematical universe. As you must notice, the word verse in universe is the same that is used for God's footprints. Not to mention that the Quran claims to address the mankind of all space-times and has therefore used a high context metaphoric language that can be interpreted into any human context in any language in any space-time. That's the only way a unified concept of God's footprints can be implied. For non-believers, it is nature's footprints. This podcast dedicated to Prophet Muhammad's policy making highlights how he used this concept to bring an ethnically diverse community onto one platform. We will then extrapolate it in present times to see how the policy is applicable today. As before, we acknowledge the contributions of Mr. Muhammad Salim Abdi, an academic and educationist, for the material and content of all these podcasts related to Prophet Muhammad's policy making to transform a nation that the Quran has addressed as completely disoriented, Zalalim Mubin. Our previous podcast explained the vision of Muhammadian transformation as outlined in Surah Jumua verse 2 that we have been taking with us from the beginning as the signature of this series. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. The 3 steps of transformation in red. Yatlu alayhim ayatihi, explaining footprints, natural systems. Yuzakkihim, purifying the thought process. Yuallimuhumul kitaba wal hikmah, education with insightfulness, are the keys that the Quran identifies to put any disoriented community on track. How the Prophet applied it? Let's see. The first key to bring people having diverse beliefs on a single platform lied in a feeling of belonging that everyone could develop for a universal authority, a divine support, who every human could relate to, regardless of faith. The Quran calls it Rabbul Alameen. This sense of belonging had to be proved by showing clear signs or footprints of such an authority. These signs or footprints are called ayat in Arabic. For example, our universe, which is isotropic, means it looks the same from everywhere. The Quran identifies its divinity at many places. For example, neither the sun can approach the moon, nor can the night outrun the day. Each is traversing an orbit of its own. To help you evaluate and categorize time with precision, you will not see any flaws in the creations, no matter which angle you see it from, because it's an isotropic universe. Another example is what the Quran has said about the creation. For example, all living beings, whether walking on the ground or gliding in the sky with wings, are species like you, created in couples from water and including crops. Please note that explanation of these verses also needs an excellent level of scholarship in natural sciences, which Muhammad must have possessed. He was called a hub of knowledge. This also declares that this level of scholarship is a prerequisite for translation and interpretation of the Quran to satisfy the requirements of Yatlu alayhim ayatihi. Next comes the question, how can this be transformed into today's highly advanced knowledge systems where explaining the footprints of God means not just cracking down the codes of nature, but also training computers to be intelligent? Please also note that scholarship in contemporary research and discovery is the biggest platform that people of diverse faiths believe in common. Interestingly, this was the first vision and mission of Mohammedan transformation of a disoriented community. Next, the previous podcast identified group-based pride and discrimination that led to racism, anarchist tendencies, and hypocrisy as prominent features of a disoriented society. The Prophet's foresightedness identified this as the second big hindrance against evolution of human race. God acknowledged his sincerity, foresightedness, and concerns and awarded him with numerous disciplines in the Quran to purify the thought process, to eliminate sectarianism, racism, disorder, and hypocrisy. For example, all humans must be mindful that they are created from one soul. The most honorable among you is the one who has a high integrity. The diversity of your languages or culture and colors or families are only to strengthen your knowledge. The translation and explanation of verses like these require proven implementation of social and behavioral science education that could be seen in practice. This process was not simple. Just like natural science education can only be provided by scholars of natural sciences, social and behavioral training could only be accepted from someone whose own character was unblemished, who held a high position of prudence, who was broad-minded, no one could lay a finger on his judgment, who could introduce and protect their integrity by inspiring actions. Please note that after scholarship, these features of character are the second big requirement to bring people of diverse beliefs onto one platform. The 40 years of Muhammad's life, before the declaration of prophethood, guaranteed these features. He was known as the truthful and the honest in the whole region in general and in the trade community in particular. He was rich in eloquence and avoided emotional arguments. His role was practical. People respected him because of his justified actions and practicality. The third mission was developing education with sense-making. It is a common observation that education does not guarantee character. Most criminals and terrorists are well educated and are qualified from reputable institutions, including Muslims, who also claim to have memorized the Quran. The question arises, where is the lacuna in their education? The answer is education with lack of insightfulness. Just like Yatlu alayhim ayatihi is interpreted as recitation of the Quran. And nobody questions what, how, and why. Teaching and learning without answering these questions results in an ignorant, dishonest, and hypocrite society divided into groups and subgroups, depending on others for every need of their life and always fighting for their rights. Hence, insightfulness is the third important key for evolution and unification. This vision of natural and social science education with a high moral character was so strong that he started receiving support not only from his elders but also from the conscious community. An honorable lady, Khadijatul Kubra, one of his trade partners, offered to be his life partner and provided lifetime financial, social, and moral support to his cause. Her cousin, Warqa bin Nawfal, a scholar of his time, also was on board. Muhammad's maternal uncle, Umayyah bin Abi Salat, was in a hand, and his uncle Imran, also known as Abu Talib, the chief of Banu Hashim, and his family turned out to be such an outstanding lifetime support, from raising Muhammad as a child to nurturing his mission, that the Quran allocated a whole chapter, Ali Imran, to them, associating with the support that had been provided to earlier prophets like Jesus. Whereas he got support for his powerful faith and character, he faced the most bitter opposition from the mafia that was in power because of the ignorance in the society, promoting different forms of slavery. This mafia includes all characters that people do not question despite their proven misleading roles that drive the society in the direction of emotional beliefs, illogical interpretation of faith, leading to dependence on others rather than playing an active role as respected citizens of the world they live in. A snapshot of these facts is, out of 1.9 billion Muslims, which comprises 25% of the world population, only 8% have post-secondary education, while the corruption rate is 40% on the average. The 5% contribution of Muslims in research and development shows that only 5% of Muslims have developed insightfulness in God's footprints, purification of thought and education with understanding. That is, our current belief system is highly emotional. This raises questions about the traditional teaching and learning of the Quran, with numerous translations and interpretations out there. Still, we comprise the part of society that the Quran has called Zalalim Mubin. Why? I leave the answer to you. Our discussion today revealed the Muhammadian vision and mission for social reforms that were needed for peace and bring people from diverse beliefs onto one platform. The absence of these reforms is evident by: number 1, poor education and research; number 2, poor social and justice systems; number 3, poor insightfulness; and number 4, emotional beliefs. The Quran calls such a society Zalalim Mubin, clearly disoriented. As we highlighted in previous podcasts, the Quran needs to be translated and explained by a team of scholars of natural and social sciences with proven record of research implemented with insightfulness and justice. On the other hand, the learners of the Quran must be adequately trained with insightfulness to learn objectively, not to memorize. Our next podcast, Part 4D, which is the last part of the series on Prophet's policies of transformation, highlights how he developed the political insightfulness by his practical actions and how they can be extrapolated in present times. And in the end, I would again remind you that this channel is an effort to think out of the box of the traditional mindset about the God, religion, mankind triangle and widen the span of questions that consistently challenge thinking minds. Please subscribe, share, make questions, and leave constructive feedback to make it better and better. Thank you very much for listening to me.